I did everything right. I worked hard. I played according to the rules. I was kind as often as anyone can be. I led a good, decent life. Why then am I lying here in a hospital bed with my house destroyed and my life on the edge of being a life anymore? I was with my wife in our brand new home. After I had recently been promoted at my job, we moved from a rougher neighboring city. Our new house was beautiful and in a perfect neighborhood. We had worked so hard for it, and things were really starting to go quite well for us. Life was at a high point, and I had finally seemed to pull all the pieces together. Then, in an instant, in the most literal sense, the world crumbled beneath me and my life came crashing down on top of me. Earthquakes are a fairly common occurrence where we live, but most go unfelt, and the rare ones that are felt are typically nothing. We were eating dinner when we felt one hit. We covered under the kitchen table, just in case. We waited there for a little while even after the tremor seemed to subside. Then we returned to our dinner. Then, several minutes later, the real one hit. The first one turning out to have just been the foreshock. A class 2.9 suddenly became a 6. Our house folded in on itself and I was struck with falling sections of the kitchen window, one of which knocked me unconscious, the other puncturing my abdomen. Next thing I know, I'm here in a hospital bed. Fortunately, my wife came out fairly unharmed, suffering only a few minor injuries. The doctors discovered that my injury lacerated my liver though and caused internal bleeding. They administered emergency surgery upon my arrival. Once inside though, apparently they discovered that it was worse than they thought. They tried stopping the bleeding but seemed to have only been able to temporarily slow it down. The doctor said I might still survive, but probably not. They're going to run a few more tests and see if it makes sense to try another surgery. And so, I lie here, waiting, thinking about how throughout my whole life I had basically always believed that there was a reason for everything that happened to me, or because of me. Everything was always a part of some sequence of reasoning and explanations. I always felt like the things that happened to me were a part of some bigger picture of me, and the things that happened because of me were mostly correlated with my efforts and abilities, or lack thereof. However, when I awoke in the hospital and slowly began to realize the circumstances of my current condition, naturally, I searched for the reason, the explanation for why this happened to me and what good it could possibly be for. And after trying as hard as I could, I have found nothing. Many of my friends and family who rushed to the hospital upon hearing the news have tried to console me and offer their own insights and explanations. Some said it was God's will, some said it was my destiny as if it was a good thing. Some said that everything would be okay and that there's always a reason in the universe, even if we don't see or understand it. I wanted to believe them, but I couldn't. As I've thought more and more about it, I've realized that every reason or explanation they gave me was merely a result of their own need for a reason, paired with their inability to find any. They were all efforts to find an exemption from conceding to the truth, that there was no good reason, at least none that had anything to do with me. Saying it was a God, or the universe's specific plan for me, or whatever else, all were but feeble attempts to claim there must be a good, just reason, in spite of the fact that there were none in sight. The Earth's crust moves, and because of this, some rock broke underground, and then the ground shook. That's the reason. And perhaps that's a good reason for the Earth, but certainly not for me, who by chance was on top of it in the wrong place, at the wrong time. That part has no reason, other than the reason of chance, which is no good reason. I wonder then, as I lie here dying in this seemingly reasonless way, what this conclusion means about all the other reasons I thought things happened for. If, to my knowledge, I've never done anything deserving of such a tragedy, how then could there be any good reason for this event occurring onto me? And if there's no good reason for this event, how then could there be any good reason for any event that led me to this one? I lie here looking back at my life, trying to make sense of everything, and I realize something foolishly obvious yet somehow overlooked by me. That every time I said, everything happens for a reason, every time I heard it and believed it, every time I seemingly found a reason for why something happened to me, I never meant that it happened for a bad reason. I meant that it happened for a good reason, a just reason. I meant that there was some considerate order to the universe, and everything in my story was placed there to allow me to become the winner of it. But how foolish was I to think this? That I was somehow special, somehow important, and that somehow the universe agreed and gave me immunity from the fact that no one wins this thing. Of course, I've always known that fortune and tragedy pass no judgment nor prejudice on who they touch. There is a history of tragedies caused unto good people and fortunes caused unto bad as proof. And yet I lived and thought as if I was somehow exempt from what this meant. Perhaps there are others who suffered from the same earthquake who will live on to give it good reasons. Maybe they will make greater connections with their neighbors and community. Maybe it will inspire them to make great changes in their life. Maybe they will rebuild their homes into something nicer that they've always wanted. Maybe some will even attribute their own good reasons to my early death, and so on. But no one's reasons will be mine. For me and those incapable of finding any, it will have none. I wonder then, who is right? Those who claim that something happened for a good reason, or those who don't find any in the same event? I wonder if perhaps both are right simultaneously. Even with everything I've said, I still believe everything in my life had a reason. Not because it had one, but because I gave it one. Because as long as I was still living and observing and reacting, I could give what happened to me, or because of me, a reason for happening. And in this sense, I was not entirely wrong when I said things happen for a reason, but I was certainly not entirely right either. I was right in creating reasons, in feeling them, but I was wrong in thinking they were real, that they were anything beyond what I created for myself to help me through it all. In truth, the events of our lives don't need reasons, we need them. When my wife tells me it's going to be okay, she doesn't know, but she hopes. And I can't blame her for this. It's a curious but truly human and respectable act, to hope. And I think I did the same thing every time I thought or felt that anything happened for a reason. I was simply hoping it did, hoping that everything could make sense and that it would be okay. I think in this, everything that seems to happen for a reason is not proof that anything happens for a reason, but proof of hope. Proof that one is still around, observing, interpreting, and working to give things a reason out of the resilience and cleverness of the human spirit. But I realize now that at some point for us all, the pen with which we write our reasons will dry up, and when this moment comes, there will be no ink left to write a reason for running out of ink. And so, until then, I say, I will lie here writing in this hospital bed, revolting against the hopelessness, creating every last reason I can.